It's a new rise.
Can somebody lift those hands tonight?
It's a new rise.
I need you to speak it over your own life
It's
tonight.
a new rise.
It's a new rise.
Good evening. I'm Megan DiMartino, and I am so thrilled to have you here with me for the Propel Deep Dive Live Global. And we are very much in for a treat tonight with my guest. And what I was thinking about is that my guest, Kim Barnes, is an OG from the Unique Leaders Live podcast that I did for almost 2 years before segueing over to the Propel Your Business and Life brand. So before I introduce you to Kim, I just would like to give you a little background to the Propel brand. I've been a developer of businesses for the last 35 years. My first skincare brand, Glycolique, was launched in 92, and it was a pioneer in result-oriented skincare. I've been in the spa, medical spa, and now wellness space for many, many years. During the 20 period, someone contacted me and said, would you like to sell me your business? I decided to sell an asset purchase, but not the trade name Novitas Spa clinical product line, as well as the URL. So I have been continuing on with the regenerative stem cell that we started in 2019. So now the business is called Novitas Beauty Regenerative Wellness. During that season, I was working with a coach, and it became very crystal clear that it was time to help you start, scale, and sustain the business and life of your dreams. So the first thing that I developed was the Propel program to start your business. And you can go on my website and look at that. We did a boot camp masterclass last week, and we're going to do another one in June, and just continuing on, because my heart is to help you. I say that I'm a New York girl deep in the heart of Texas with a serving, mentoring spirit. So aligned with that came Unique Leaders Live. During the lockdown, I decided I was not only going to be on podcasts, but I was going to start one and then a live as well. And that is how the Unique Leaders Live and podcast was born. And Kim Barnes, my guest this evening, was a guest. So I've been doing this forever because my heart is to help you see each individual in your story. We all have experiences. We all have, that story, so to speak. But each and every person each week, and going back to Unique Leaders back into 2020, you can glean information from each person of how they started, how they scaled, and how they sustained the business and life of your dreams and their dreams. So that is really what the Propel Deep Dive is about. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you my dear friend and guest this evening, Kim Barnes.
Hi, Megan.
Hello.
Great to be with you.
You as well. We see each other on occasion in Austin, Texas at networking events. And as I shared, you were on the Unique Leaders Live. So
right.
I've thought about that as I was preparing for today. And I was thinking about how many people who have been on the Propel Deep Dive haven't been or weren't on the Unique Leaders. So it's fun to have you back, and people then can go back to YouTube and check out that segment that was back in 2021, whenever that was, 22, and see how the story has evolved. So speaking about story, as I shared in my intro, that this is really about you and your story, you and your reality. And of course, Mike Barnes will be sprinkled in this. Can't, have your story without Mr. Barnes. But with that said, do share with our guests. Let's go back to young Kim and just a little thumbnail sketch of you, where you grew up, and what your dreams and goals were at that time, and then the trajectory into where you are today.
Gosh, it's always, it's funny. The older you get, the more there is to look back on. Although also the gift of the age is also that you can look back and see how things were interconnected in ways that you didn't notice at the time.
Mhm.
I grew up in Houston. I moved there when I was 4, lived there until I graduated from high school and went on to the University of Texas to start my college career. And what was interesting is that I went to college thinking I wanted to be a doctor.
Mm.
I had taken a personality assessment, the Berkman test, which is sort of
Mhm.
a, just what are your natural
Yes.
strengths and abilities, way back when I was in high school, because I thought that I wanted to be a doctor. And what was interesting is that it was a good friend of mine's dad who was the facilitator of that, and he looked at the results and said, interesting. I just want you to know that the likelihood for, or the things that would show me that you would be successful as a doctor, probably are 4 and 5. They're not
Mm.
sort of your top features or personality traits. And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, I want to be a doctor." And he said, "Okay, well, I'm not saying you can't be. I'm just saying those might not use your natural abilities and talents as best as possible. So it might be more of a struggle." And I, of course, went, whatever, just kind of thought, well, yeah, what does he know?
What
So
is he?
yeah, yeah. So I went off to college my freshman year, which it is sort of interesting. I took very little science in high school because I didn't have to. So I went to college. I'd actually never even taken chemistry. So, I was like, how hard can it be? Right. And
Mm.
so I took my first chemistry class, which wasn't even necessarily for, it wasn't for like a pre-med major. It was more of a math chemistry. I actually did really well in it, but it made me realize I didn't really like it very much. So
Mhm.
all of a sudden I'm a freshman in college thinking, oh, I thought I really wanted to be a doctor. And yet, okay, I don't really like science so much. So that there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And I
Mhm.
also had the realization that I think I wanted to be a doctor more just to say that I was able to accomplish that.
Mhm.
That makes sense, that I had something.
Well, I was going to ask you what made you think you wanted to be a doctor, but see, you just answered
I
the
think
question.
I like to help people, and I think that it seemed
Mhm.
like a really great profession, and I think I realized that, and not to go into all of this, but I, had a dad with very, very high expectations, and so I think that it was just like, I can prove to you that I can be a doctor if I wanna be,
Mhm.
but I realized that while I probably could have done that and gone down that path, doing that until I was probably almost 30 by medical school and residency and all of that seemed like maybe not a great idea if you're not really that naturally motivated to do that. That's a long time to be forcing. And what was interesting is that I was in my sorority house one day when I was still a freshman and saw a couple of older girls who were in a journalism class, and they were walking through the house, which dates me, with their tape recorder, because that was when we still used tape recorders
Mhm.
to do interviews and that kind of thing. And I just thought, that seems really interesting. And that's where I started with deciding, okay, I'm going to do journalism. And what's interesting is that when I looked at that original Berkman test that I did back in high school,
Mhm.
when I looked at the number one of that was persuasive. And I don't remember, and I remember at the time he said that you'd be good at being a teacher or potentially in sales or something like that. That's a very
Mhm.
personable kind of role.
Mhm.
And what I thought was really interesting is that being a reporter is very much like being an educator,
Sure.
because
Oh,
that's what
yes.
you're doing. You're trying to find out the information and simplify it and distill it down to be able to explain it to somebody else. So I really
Mhm.
felt then, oh, this is my passion. This is something that complements what my natural tendencies are. So that's when I started down the path of going to doing broadcast journalism, which is what my
Mhm.
degree is in and where I met Mike and all of that. So
Now
I don't
you
know
met
how to
Mike,
go from there. Yes.
and so you met Mike at UT, University of
Mhm.
Texas.
Mhm.
Yes. I just want to have an adjunct to the Berkman is that if all, excuse me, if all doctors could be personable and be interested in the person and ferreting out information, our medical system would be very different.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. 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 Because we all have different strengths, right?
Right,
The person
right.
who's really, I mean, if you look at engineers or people like that, they can fix all kinds of problems. They may not be able to always communicate well what it is that they're doing to the average person, but they can certainly do their trade well. So, and the same thing, being a reporter, I was very good at understanding big picture and focusing and understanding. And there's a lot of things that I'm not as good at, right? You know, so we all have our strengths for sure.
So now with Mike, was he your husband, who now is your husband? Not then,
Right.
but was he in journalism as well? What was his broadcast? He
Yes.
was as well.
Yes. He
Okay.
he knew from a pretty young age that that's what he wanted to do. And
Mhm.
what was so super interesting about him is that he is still extremely introverted, and even more so and more shy when he was in high school. And he tells the story a lot of times, especially when we're doing trainings for communication training. He'll tell the story that when he took his first speech class in high school, because he thought, if I want to be on television, I probably need to learn how to be a better public speaker. He was so nervous and shy that even just having to stand up and introduce himself in his speech class made him a wreck. And
Mhm.
he was somebody he would say that he could go an entire semester in a class and not ever say a word. I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine. Oh, you mean you didn't answer questions? And he was like, oh no, because there's a chance that you're not going to know the answer, or, there's things that can happen. So he was extremely shy. So he worked through a lot of that, just as far as getting confident enough to be able to want to do sports. He specifically wanted to do sports. I was more
Yes.
interested in news.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. I assumed that he wanted, the reason he was doing the broadcast journalism is because he wanted to be a sportscaster.
Yes, and he
Yes.
knew, and I think as he learned, he knew so and knows so much about sports that built his confidence that, oh, I know stuff and I can share it with other people. And for him, being on television it's one you're talking to one person, you're talking to the camera. So
Yes.
in some ways it was easier for him. It was much easier for him to be on camera talking about sports or whatever he was talking about, versus being in public in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but we met in a journalism class one January, and it's a long story, but we had 2 dates that semester that did not go so well, and nothing bad, but it was just not
A
great.
kismet, not a kismet, not a love it.
Well, maybe for one and not the other, but it was one of those things where I had to have some convincing, but I think that it was partly just because he was so shy and nervous that he wasn't able to really be his true personality. And that went on for 2.5 years, where, suffice it to say, he likes to always share this, we had 7 dates over 3 years. It was a slow process, and 2 of them happened within 2 weeks of each other. The first 2 dates we had, he had called me to ask me to a party that he was going on as an RA. He was a resident advisor for a dorm, and I had a sorority party. So he was calling me to invite me to the dorm party, and I said, "Oh, well, hey, actually, I've got this party." So we actually went to mine first. So we planned 2 dates before we had the first one, which isn't always a great. Isn't always great, just in case. So we had those first 2 came, within the 2 weeks of each other, and then the other 5 were spread out over the next 2.5 years. And then he had that bad car accident. So that's
yes. And so there were things that happened, but ultimately you married.
we did.
Yes. And you still live in Austin, Texas. So I don't remember this. Did you ever live elsewhere?
Yeah. After college, I went to Waco, to the Waco market, and worked in the TV station there, or a TV station there. And I lived in Temple for a short time, and then in Waco, but it was the same TV station. And Mike, actually, he couldn't find, there were so few sports jobs back then. And so he actually waited tables for a few months after graduating early. He'd graduated in December instead of in May, and waiting for a sports job and a sports opening. And so he finally got a job in College Station. And he talks about all the time that he took a pay cut from waiting tables to go be a part-time sportscaster, making minimum wage. It is not as glamorous as it might appear. And he did that for just about 6 months and then came back to Austin. So he was actually already in Austin working when we got married, and I quit my job in Waco and moved to Austin without a job. And fortunately, within a month and a half or so, 2 months, I was able to get a job at a TV station too. So then we actually worked together. We anchored together some. It was pretty fun. We actually anchored weekends together for about a year and a half, 2.5. They kind of all blend together, but he would know all the dates. He's the one who remembers every single date. But
So for
together a long
people's
time.
history, or did look you up, so to speak, was it at NBC?
The ABC station.
ABC. Okay.
Yeah. And I worked there for 50. So I worked there for 12 years plus the 3 years in Waco. And then he worked there for almost 30.
Yes. Well, we'll go there in a minute.
Yeah.
But with that said, you both built this very dynamic on air. And so I'm looking at you, Kim, listening to you, and you're always so articulate and you have beautiful voice. And you convey not only your physical beauty, but your inner beauty and how you present yourself so beautifully. But I think about today with this phone and all these videos that people do, and I'm not saying I don't, but what is your take? I know I'm deviating a little bit here, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this for our guests, because again, this is streamed out on all these platforms. And it lives forever on YouTube. And then it goes into the podcasting platforms. So obviously the goal is for people to watch this at some time, And by the way, folks, I'd love you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, but that's a whole other point. So what's your take on all of these videos and all of this? What is your take on this?
I think that on the one hand, it is so amazing that we can share our own stories, our own opinions, our own thoughts, our expertise in such a way that's so accessible to everyone. Anyone who has a phone or a Zoom account or, whatever, a computer can do that. And so on the one hand, I think it's amazing. It used to be that for you to be able to get coverage, if you will, or get some notoriety, you had to be interviewed by a television station and be on the news. And while I think that's still a great way to be able to share your message and build your credibility and your authority, now you don't have to wait necessarily just for those opportunities. Like you can create your own show. You can create your own podcast. You can create your own world, your own environment, if you will. And so on the one hand, I think it is amazing. I think on the other hand, excuse me, on the other hand, I do think it can create a lot of noise, anxiety not for necessarily for the person creating it, but for just we're just bombarded with so many messages.
Yes.
And I think it can really be hard to take that breath sometimes. I was actually on coming home from a walk today, and I talked to my neighbor who has a middle schooler and a high schooler. And the middle schooler yesterday had posted in our neighborhood Facebook group that they were having she and 2 other friends had made cupcakes, and they were lemonade. And so they were having a little cupcake and lemonade stand outside. That was great. So I was kind of joking with the mom. I said, well, you know what, next time they do it, text me, because I'll send Mike down. He'll for sure, he will always participate. And she said it was just so great to see them off their phones, making cupcakes, interacting with each other, interacting with the neighbors. And so it really amplifies the fact that this is happening at such a young age, where that's what they know. And so, I do really feel like a lot of kids these days are just so much more anxious. And I think it's partly because there's just so many of these messages of coming at them. And, do you do TikTok? Do you do Instagram? Or how do you show yourself? Should you show yourself? And I think there's so many pressures like that. So while I think there's so many positives, because it makes it easy to share about yourself, your business, what you believe in, all of those things, it can also be difficult for us to filter out the part that we should pay attention to.
Yes. And especially like you just said about kids, meaning at a younger age, because again, it's really, I'm doing this as a branding thing to help people understand what we do in the Propel community, because it's more than just this show, but this is a piece of it, because it's my heart to highlight someone and have them share their story so others can hear their story. And we're going to evolve this, but as I said, I'd be remiss if I didn't go here with you, a media expert.
Well, sure. And as a person who teaches people how to be on camera, I think there is no better way to help somebody get to know you better than being in person. It's on video, because I
Yes.
can hear you, I can see you, I can see your inflections, I can see your passion, I can see your eyes, all of that,
Yeah.
where those are things you can't get just when you're talking to somebody on the phone.
So
So
you just said something very, very important, is
Mhm.
you both teach this in Barnes Teen Media.
Mhm.
So again, we'll go into this down as we evolve, but it's about having coaches and being professional and being trained
Mhm.
to do it in a fashion that will not only help your brand, but others not feel what you just said, because it's about your identity. It's about who you are. It's
Yeah.
about really, not just figuring it out. Hopefully, you know that, but to put it on film and go. So, with that said, you both were here in the market. Mike was a pillar of the sports community. When I came to Georgetown, Austin market in
Mhm.
2004, first of all, you did watch TV in those days.
That's right. That's
And
how we got our news, right? Yeah.
right. So you did. And so with that said, I didn't know you guys, but of course I knew because then you then had two beautiful children, and kind of your career, took more of a back seat for a bit. Is that
Yes,
correct?
I mean, when Brandon was born, I still worked full time. It was a crazy juggle. I can remember one day in particular where we never saw the middle babysitter. We just saw the babysitter. One of us was here to let the first babysitter in. The babysitter left the second babysitter in, who let the third babysitter in, that was relieved by one of us. So fortunately that didn't happen very often, but we had a crazy schedule. So we tried to manage it so that for a while we both worked Monday through Friday, or no, we both worked weekends, so that when we anchored together.
Mhm.
And so we would, changed our days off, where one of us was off Monday, Tuesday, one of us was off Thursday, Friday, and we overlapped on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. So we always had to have really creative childcare situations. When I was pregnant with Taylor, when Brandon was, well, he was like 2.5. He was almost 3 when Taylor was born. When I was about to have Taylor, I had really felt like I would love to be able to be part-time, but it wasn't something that the TV station did for on-air people, but I thought I'd ask anyway. And so fortunately, it was a situation where they were getting ready to launch this weekend morning show and said, well, your timing is pretty good because we actually need somebody to anchor that morning show. Would you be up for that? So the long and short of it is that I worked Saturday and Sunday for another 4 years, every Saturday and Sunday. I didn't work Monday through Friday. So I worked just Saturdays and Sundays. When I started, it was 2 12-hour shifts. Actually, it was 25 hours in 2 days, because I would anchor the morning show and then report for the evening show. And so it was a grind, but I was so grateful. And frankly, I worked 10-hour days anyway, normally, as a reporter and anchor. So, 12, I was like, oh, what's the difference? So it didn't really make that much difference, but it allowed us to be able to, I was home with them Monday through Friday. But strangely, I kept always picking up other part-time jobs. So even when I was part-time at the TV station, I'd started working for a nonprofit that was around responsible television journalism. I taught a class at UT. So I never really did just one part-time job. I kind of laughed that I had 3 part-time jobs sometimes at any given time. So I didn't have to have one real job, which probably didn't make much sense. One funny little story is that when I was on maternity leave with Brandon, I actually taught a summer school class at the University of Texas, because my boss at the time, when I was pregnant, in April, well, I guess it was before Brandon was born, said, "Hey, I got a call from UT and they need somebody who can fill in for this summer school class because one of the professors got this opportunity. And so we need to find somebody to teach a summer school class." And summer school classes are very intense, short.
Mhm.
And this journalism one was 4 or 5 hours a day. It was a long
Wow.
class because it had a lab built in. And so my boss at the time said, well, Kim will be off. She should probably do it. So when Brandon was 2 months old, I was teaching a summer school class at the University of Texas while I was on maternity leave, which was super fun. I loved it. Actually, one of our babysitters was one of my who became one of our babysitters was one of our students who, anyway.
But I think it's so important to reiterate or highlight really that when you're doing something you love, even though you're juggling and you're doing all of the family juggling, when you're doing something you love, it's not work. It's just really being involved in what you love.
Yes. And
And
yes. I mean, yes, I loved what I got to do. It was also not to be totally transparent, it's not a super high paying profession in the
yes.
local markets. And so it wasn't it wasn't really it really wasn't an option for our family for
see.
me to not work at all. And
Right.
so, but also but you're right. I loved what I did. And so I did I did the part-time at the TV station for 4 years.
Mhm.
Fortunately, pretty quickly after I started with the morning show and we got that launched, they asked me to come back to doing evenings. So I did the 6 and 10 or the 5:30 and 10, which was a much shorter shift. So that one, I only worked like 10 hours. So that was awesome. And I loved getting to just anchor again. And so that was much more fun. But it's a weird schedule. I worked every Saturday and Sunday. And so if kids had a birthday party or things like that, I didn't always get to go. And if we wanted to take a day off as a family and actually have a whole day off, one of us had to take a vacation day. So it worked great for our family. It might not be what every family would want to do.
Sure, but it was part of your lives.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
part of your lives.
Yeah. And because we were both in media, we understood. I understood that he had to go work a 16-hour day when there was a UT football game that was at home and he had to do a show before and do a show after or whatever. So I didn't think I wasn't, sitting at home going, you have to work again, kind of thing where some people have a real hard time with that.
Yeah.
And then finally after 4 years of being part-time, they just said, and this was where I just said, okay, God, you have to make this really clear as to what my next steps are, because after doing that 4 years, it was, it's tough. Again, we had no family. We had very little family time. It was a huge juggle. And so I went into my meeting with my news director when my contract was up, because it had to be renewed every 2 years in that role. And so he just said, we need you to come back because of head count and blah, blah, blah. And again, I was the only on-air part-time person I think the station had ever had and currently had. And so they just said, head count, blah, blah, blah. We need you got to come back full time. And so I just said, I remember very specifically saying, so you're saying it's full time or no time? And he said, yes. And so I got in the car and I was like, okay, God, I think I got it. And they tried to be really helpful with, okay, well, you could work mornings 3 days a week and then work weekends, or we could come up with a different schedule. And the more I looked at it, I just thought it was like trying to push a square hole in a round peg. And it was just, I wasn't going to make enough. I mean, it was, frankly, it wasn't going to be paying enough for that craziness. So at that time, I'd actually started working with a direct sales company that did home parties and talked about home decor and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, you know what? I was still working with the nonprofit. So I thought, you know what? I think I can make a go where I don't need that. And then I ended up doing like a commercial for HEB.
Right.
That for 13 years, every single month for 13 or 14 years, which ended up being really fun. So I kept my toe in a little bit.
Absolutely. And what year was that when you said part-time or no time? What year was that?
That was in 2004. It's easy. Thank goodness Taylor was born in 2000. So it makes it so easy to figure out.
What I thought, because I moved here in 4 and you were not there. And
2004.
So,
So June, I think it was June of 2004 was my last weekend. Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm, mhm.
After a long time on TV here. Yeah.
So when I met you, you were very involved in so many things, and again, very uh, committed to helping others and being involved in the community.
Mhm.
And your husband continued on for 30, how many did you say?
29, it was just short of 30. It was 29 years.
Just
Yeah, won
29
so
years.
many awards, and
Yes.
unfortunately, we had the station had new management that came in that didn't necessarily see the value of, all of his awards and everything like that, and let him go. So it was a surprise.
So let's begin here.
Wasn't it?
The
It definitely was not part of the what we would have thought would have been the plan.
AD and BC,
Yep.
and so here is that line in the sand, and that was very traumatic,
Yeah.
not only for both of you and your commitment to the station and what you did and had done, but also a person who had committed and went to college and this was his life and just ended it.
Yeah, he was the hardest working guy I'd
Mhm.
ever seen. Yeah, he was so dedicated and worked really, really hard and did a lot of amazing things, and one, was recognized by a lot of different awards and stuff too. Yeah.
And I do believe that Austin paper, Austin Statesman.
Well, I think I know where you're going. Yes, it was actually funny. His last day on the air was in February or March. Again, Mike is the dates guy. I'm the around the time. I think it was March. In March of 19, and that later that fall,
Mhm.
The Austin Chronicle always did the best of Austin, and Mike had won best of Austin's best sportscaster, I think 16 out of the last 17 years or something like that. And what was really funny is that after having been off the air, left the air February,
Mhm.
March of that year, that fall, after he was not on the air anymore, he won again, which was the irony. Was fun. It was, I have to say, it was a proud moment because it
It
just
was.
showed I think for the weirdest thing about that was the number of comments and just the outpouring of, oh my gosh, you, like, I grew up watching you. And the thing at the time too is that most people didn't a lot of people thought he had retired because that's just his style. He wasn't very forthcoming. I mean, he wasn't gonna be he's just
Yeah.
very above board. And frankly, I was still doing freelance work too. So
Mhm.
we were trying to manage that. And
Right.
so so a lot of people just kind of assumed that he'd retired, even though that was
Mhm.
very much not the case. But what was interesting is that, there were, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and it was almost like being eulogized while you're alive. It was it was like, brought you to tears, the things that people wrote that were so kind and so sweet and just so complimentary. And my kids actually for Christmas that year compiled all of those comments
Mhm.
in a document so that he could have that together.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it was really, so on the one hand, it was awful. He also got to see how loved he is.
Yes.
Um, and that I think was, again, it's just, again, that doesn't pay the bills, but
No.
it does make you feel like I've had an impact and I've
Amen.
really affected people's lives.
But also you have strong faith, both of
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
and walk in faith and knowing. And as we've all heard, folks, when one door closes, another one opens. But it requires that faith to really own that trust in the Lord,
Mhm.
to do that. And
Mhm.
we are human. And so we have emotion and we have feelings and we have fears and all of that. And you have two children and, a life. So
Yeah.
it's a very challenging thing. So you said 19 was when, and I kind of assume, putting back in my brain of the timeline, and
Mhm.
then COVID happened, and then you slowly started, or maybe not so slowly, but the training, because again, you have tremendous background, both of you. So
Mhm.
you started doing the Barnes team media. So why don't you share with A, how did it start? And B, what are you doing now?
Sure. I actually started that by myself back in 2016, really when Facebook Live started. I
Mhm.
noticed an opportunity where, kind of like we talked about before, the
Mhm.
opportunity for just being able to get on and easily be able to share your message
Mhm.
and become, build that credibility was so accessible because of Facebook Live. So I started the business technically by myself while he was still at the station doing on camera training. I worked a lot with realtors and other business people, and I did workshops and things like that. It was still always more part-time because I was doing some other stuff at the same time too.
Mhm.
And I was still doing some freelance stuff. And so that started with just more like training and that kind of thing. And then I continued to do that. And then once Mike lost his job, we thought, well, okay, we can do this together. And
Mhm.
I had just launched a program in December of 19 that was starting in January of 19. And then we all know what happened, of course. And so we did the 10-day on camera challenge that we
Right.
started in January as kind of an experiment. And then we did it again. And then once COVID hit, oh my gosh, everybody was on camera. We doubled down and we did a new 10-day challenge every 2 weeks until I think June or July. It was a lot. That was the busiest that we've ever been because
Mhm.
we were helping companies and professional speakers. And, you came through the
I did
certification
it.
program
Yes.
we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Camera Ready virtual speaker certification program
Mhm.
worked with companies that needed to help their employees be able to be presentable on Zoom. We helped HR companies that now all of a sudden their in-person trainings that they always did were now all virtual. How do you pivot? So we
Mhm.
did a lot of that. And at the same time, right before COVID hit was when Mike went to go look for memory care places for his mom. And he came home from that trip in November of 2019 before all of the world just, our whole
Right.
lives got turned
Mhm.
upside down, and said, this was super overwhelming doing this. And I feel like if we were this overwhelmed and we felt prepared going in, I think other people are bound to be so overwhelmed. We should do something to help people. And at the time, I just thought, oh my gosh, we're trying to build this other business. I don't know what that is. That doesn't sound like very fun stuff to talk about. And I just, frankly, it just like went right.
Right. Right.
So once COVID hit, we were doubling down on all the on-camera training that we have,
Mhm.
and we have continued to do that with, whether it's virtual
Mhm.
presentation skills, public speaking. We just finished a big project last week. We have another one in July. So we're still continuing to help companies that need to help their employees
Mhm.
present, whether it's virtually
Yes.
or in person. So that's been
Mhm.
good. And then in between, the whole parenting aging parents thing started too. So it has been, it was funny. I asked Mike today, I said, has it really been 5 years since you left the station?
It is.
And he said, yes. And I said,
Yes.
wow, like it is a blur.
These 5 years are like a lump.
Yes, it has been a blur.
Just amazingly lumpy. I mean, I have to go back to my camera roll to kind of discern the different
For
years.
sure. Yeah,
And
for sure. A lot of it was it before or after COVID? Like that's a huge
yes.
indicator line. But
Mhm.
even since, wow, okay, that's been a good 4 years since
Yes.
the
Yes.
shutdown. And so, man, yeah, my life is still very much a blur, to tell you the truth.
So with that blur, let's break it down into small manageable parts. So because we both know, and not just you and I, but everyone here has, and I am a parent, you're a parent. I could be your parent, age-wise. And my point is that I'm going to use myself as an example. In the last 2 years, Kim, I heard a message from Holy Spirit, release and be ready. Now, be ready for what? I have no idea. But I mean, I'm gleaning things along the way. But on an earthly plane, what I really own is I was involved with my own parents passing and my mother and father-in-law's passing. Now, my daughter Jill did all of that, don't misunderstand, but meaning I saw how involved it is. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm just talking about the stuff now.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to be a burden to anyone. And I want to free my life up, like be ready for whatever that is.
Mm.
So I have been doing that, Kim, and this is about you, but the point is that this is what I see with humans, is that it's very difficult to let go
Mhm.
and therefore people don't.
Mhm.
And then from a legality position, and I also have been involved with my own husband's passing, and that was a nightmare, that legality piece. And
Mhm.
so because we had not done a will, we married in 6, he had a stroke in 9, and it was a mess for those next 2 years.
Mm.
So the point is that there was nothing organized.
Yeah.
So I would like you to share with our guests how important it is to really prepare.
Mhm.
Whether you're the child of the parent, the parent, or the parent,
Yeah.
I'm taking responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So with that said, just share with our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is that nobody wants to think about what it means or why we need to be prepared.
Mhm.
Usually it means that either something bad has happened or there's decline or somebody has passed. And so nobody really wants to think about those things. And yet, as you shared, when you don't have those documents in place or don't have some of the plans in place, it can really it can just be so awful. And
Mm.
so one of the things that Mike and I are so passionate about is helping adult children be more prepared for this stage of life, which
Mhm.
can include, okay, mom and dad, we need to gather some information together. And that's why we created the Caregiver's Key, which is a place to keep all that important information. So it's important to get all that information because it just allows you to be able to help better. When I'm on the phone with my mom's doctor with her, and they say, hey, and ask my mom, when did have you had a shingle shot? And she says, oh, sure, probably. And they want to know, well, can you be a little more specific?
Mhm.
Fortunately, now I can open up my folder and book and say, oh, okay, it was here and it was
Mhm.
this kind and that kind of thing. So it just allows you to be able to step in and help and or have somebody be able to help you. I
Right.
do think that my hope is that with us having these conversations with our parents and being able to sort of know the things that we need to know, hopefully it also helps us start putting that
Mhm.
stuff in place now too, to help
Truth.
make it easier for our children. And even though my children are 24 and 27 and I feel great today. So I mean that's the hard part is that you don't need it until you do. And
Mhm.
often once you need it, it's too late if you don't already have it.
Yes.
And so I think there are things that we can all learn from, whether it's, hey, mom and dad, can we have these conversations? Can we start having these discussions and gathering this information as well as, oh, I need to start making sure that I'm getting my ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Funny little story when we did one of our very first interviews, because when we first started the Parenting Aging Parents Facebook group, we thought, okay, we can open that up and see kind of as an experiment, are people
Mhm.
interested? And we thought, what can we add to the conversation? And because of both being former TV journalists, we thought, well, we can do interviews. We've interviewed thousands of people. We're pretty good at that. We can do that. We started doing interviews right off the bat. One of the very first ones we did was a legal one about powers of attorney. And
Mm.
something came up in that discussion, and Mike and I, after the interview, looked at each other and we thought, huh, okay, we did a floppy disk will, which ages us, when Brandon was born. Literally like put the floppy disk in,
Right.
type your information and print it out. And we had it notarized at my father-in-law's office. And we had that, and again, you think, oh, we've done the stuff. We did it, we got it all signed and, notarized, put it in the little, firebox safe. And then we realized, oh, we haven't done anything with it since then. And we've had another child and she's now in her 20s. So it made us realize that, life gets busy. You
Yes.
just go on about your daily life. You're busy, you're working, you're taking care of your kids. We hadn't even given it a thought. We have since redone our wills. So we've included both of our kids. And frankly, we went ahead and not made them, but suggested or had them do their powers of attorney and medical directives and things like that, because it's just helpful to have no matter
Yes.
what age you are. And
Yes.
so the importance of having those conversations and getting those documents, the stories that we hear from people in our community when those documents are lacking
Mhm.
can be awful. And
Yes. Yes.
families don't want to have the discussions. And so that's a whole nother sort of topic.
Mhm.
How do you bring it up? And I've
Mhm.
even had kids who've told me, my parents have tried to talk to me about it and I don't want to talk to them about it. And I said, please, if they're wanting to talk to you about it, you have to talk to
Yeah.
them, you know,
Yeah. Yes.
because sometimes the parents don't. So it's trying to make everybody feel like it's not wishing anything to happen. It's not,
No.
jinxing yourself that something's going to happen sooner. It's just, how can you be as prepared as possible? Because even though we can't take away the crisis that might happen, it
Mhm.
Mike always likes to say it at least lowers the crisis level a little bit.
Exactly. It does. It does. And it's wisdom. It's just wisdom.
Mhm.
So you were sharing that when you mentioned very casually a Facebook page. Okay.
It's a private Facebook group.
Group, rather. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so what's fabulous about this, Kim, is you started this, and how many are in this group now?
We have almost 17,000 people
Right.
from around the world, a few from around the world. I mean, mostly from the US, but we have a little group from Canada, and we have some Australians, and we have some other countries represented as well. We were featured in the Costco magazine in January, which helped us really get a lot of reach outside of Texas, and
Mhm.
that really helped bring in people from all over the country. Mike had already created a little map, gosh, within the first year, so that we could see where we had people, and we had noticed that and confirmed that we had at least somebody from every state back then, but now we have just a much broader reach, which is great, because then we have people in those different cities that can say, if somebody says, hey, I'm looking for information in New York or
Mhm.
in Denver, that
Mhm.
they're more likely that there are going to be other people who have some experience that might can share their experiences as well.
So when you started this and it has grown to 17,000, how in a very, because I have a couple of Facebook groups and I don't have 17,000 in them. So how did you do that, Kim?
I think it's been mostly word of mouth.
Mm.
We have been interviewed on a lot of podcasts. We've had some television interviews. We were in the Costco magazine. We've written written for some articles and things like that. So helping to spread the word. I think it's so much of it has been word of mouth,
Mhm.
because it's a topic that nobody talks about, which is the
Yeah.
whole reason why when Mike, had planted that seed in 2019, it wasn't until 21
Mhm.
when we actually started the group. And that was partly because it took a year and a half before Mike's mom actually moved to memory care. And that was
Yes.
partly because of COVID and really getting his dad on board, because we knew that he needed to be 100% ready, or as
Mhm.
close to ready as he could be, because it was so hard. I mean, they had to separate after, living in different places after being married for more than 60 years. That's really hard.
Yes.
But it was that move that was, I was also putting together, you know what, this is interesting. This is really overwhelming and hard, and nobody talks about it, which
Yeah.
makes it more overwhelming and more
Right.
confusing. And
Exactly.
I think that it has been such a safe haven for people that they just appreciate the fact that they have a place where other people understand, and
Yeah.
they don't have to feel like I'm the only one going through this. I got to figure it all out on my own.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I think that in a strange way, what my mission is, part of it, let's just say that, is because I've been blessed with good health and a platform and the opportunity to speak
Mhm.
and to give people the understanding that it is imperative that you take care of certain things,
Mhm.
and one is power of attorney and
Mhm.
health power of attorney. Yes,
Mhm.
very much so.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's all of that. But look how God works with your media piece and with this for such a time as this, because it is an epidemic of an epidemic. What I mean by that is memory. You mentioned memory care, and we're not going to go there. But the point is that there's so many people dealing with that, and when you lose your memory, how can you go and take care of these things?
Right, right. And dementia is just one, I mean, is a very prevalent piece, but it's just one piece. There are
Oh,
so
yeah.
many health issues. There are so many
Mhm.
other, strokes, or just
Mhm.
physical issues, or diabetes, or all of those kinds of things. And I do think that with our medical advances, many times we can keep people living longer, but not
Mhm.
always better. And
Yes.
so it creates much more need for care. And, one of the questions we always get from people is, okay, mom needs some more help. I don't think she can stay at home anymore. Who pays for that?
Mm.
And the shocking reality, which is for the most part, she
You
does.
do.
She
Mhm.
does, or
Mhm.
somebody does, but
Yeah,
not,
somebody does.
yeah,
Yeah,
but it's
it's
not,
personal
yeah,
pay. Right.
yeah, exactly. And
Mhm.
I think that is shocking to people that they just don't have the recognition, the realization. And the truth is, it's because we've never done this before. I've
Right.
never, I've never helped. And the difference between same thing is true when you have children,
Mhm.
yet in that realm, everybody wants to jump along and alongside you and give you advice and help. And it's really because it's normally a fun topic. And even though when you're having a tough time with terrible twos or there's, colic or whatever it is, we just
Mhm.
know that generally the trajectory is going to get better.
Yeah.
Where unfortunately in this scenario, once somebody is really ill,
Right.
it's not always,
Right.
it doesn't always
Exactly.
go,
Oh, no, it doesn't end. It
yeah.
doesn't end the same as the going out of the terrible twos. Yes.
Right, exactly. Where there's hope, there's excitement, there's good things to come, and unfortunately, there's generally not, and sometimes there are, but generally it goes the opposite direction. And so I think that's what can make people feel really alone and confused. And again, I haven't had to understand Medicare yet. It's really confusing. I
Mhm.
haven't had to make some of these decisions or those kinds of things. And so I think that's what makes it more difficult.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
frankly, I've always looked to my parents to be the
Mhm.
ones to give me advice and for me to
Mhm.
go to when I had a challenge or a problem. And now I'm having to, mom, no. I mean, literally just tonight, I said, Mom, we have to change some of her medication and we need to get a pill cut in half. And the caregiver who normally helps me because mom is in a different city than I am,
Mhm.
they have bad weather and she wasn't able to make it today. And so I'm in my head going, okay, can I FaceTime with her and walk her through cutting this in half and putting it in the right pill box and all of this,
Mm.
which I'm not sure, the patience is I'm not always the most patient person when it comes to her. And I try really, really hard, but I said, please don't take your pills yet because we've got to do something with it. And she's like, okay, okay. And I said, no, can you write a note to yourself? Oh yeah, I
Mhm.
got it. I was like, no, did you get paper out yet? Oh no. Okay. Could you get paper out? And so I'm literally having to say, can you write this down?
Mhm.
Because she has early stages of dementia. So her
Mhm.
short-term memory is not great.
Mhm.
And I literally just said, okay, now what does it say? So I had to read it back because sometimes she can't read her handwriting. And I said,
Mhm.
please put it on the pill box so that when I'm done tonight, we can. And she was going off to the movie that they're going to watch she lives in a
Mhm.
retirement community. So I said,
Mhm.
call me when you're done. But again, that's a super minor, very simple example. But
No, but it's a very
yeah,
important
we're
point.
changing her
Okay.
medication. And yet I had to get
Very
the pharmacy to do this and the nurse practitioner to do this and manage this, blah, blah, blah. And, it's just things there's just a lot going on in your head a lot of times that you're
Mhm.
trying to manage alongside your work, your
Mhm.
family, your
Mhm.
kids, your volunteer stuff, everything else that you're doing.
So with that, people that are listening and will listen, and they're going, "Holy moly, guacamole!" But and what I'm the hope and possibilities girl,
Yes, yes.
and so what there's one thing that I ask every guest at the end, and I'm going to tie this into that. Because again, if you look at the way God works, I mean, he orders our steps. Your husband, when he was fired, and let's call it what it was, and you use that term, um, he started speaking at churches.
Mhm,
And I could see that it was very helpful to him
mhm,
and for him.
mhm.
And Jeremiah 29:11
You
is
bet.
one of his scriptures.
It is.
And God orders our steps. And so looking at this crossover, it's just so fascinating to me. And looking at you and listening to you and speaking your own personal story with your mom, to me, it's a story of love.
Mm,
Love of your mom, your family, commitment, everything that you're doing and have done with your own kids. We could go off there. We don't have the time, but fabulous two children and your daughter. Yay, Taylor's in New York City.
that's right, that's right.
Yay, yay, yay. But with that said, Kim, we both know Sharon Lecter and Rich Dad, Poor Dad and 3 Feet from Gold. In that book, has her success formula. And in it, I'm not going to go the whole success formula and all that, but she speaks of passion and purpose.
Mm.
Okay. And I ask everyone the same question. What is your passion personally? Not Mike, not, what is your passion and what is your purpose?
I feel like my purpose is to educate people.
Mhm.
I think that's what I've been doing my whole career, because as a reporter, that's what you're doing. You're educating people. And I think it's educating and informing. And I think that my purpose is to be the light, to be a light to people who need encouragement or need support. And
Mhm.
I think the way that in which we do that is by helping. For me, I think having the information and the education that I need, and being able to provide that safe space so that people can feel comfortable where they are. And my current passion is just helping adult children be more prepared. I
Mhm.
just think that the more prepared you can be, the easier this is. Doesn't make
Yes.
it easy, just
Mhm.
easier.
No, but it
And
is.
we are so passionate about, I would love to be able to get into companies and organizations and conferences and be able to share this with people so
Mhm.
that more people can be prepared, because I just think that we are just at the tip of the iceberg. The baby boomers are, are the youngest, I think, are turning 65, and this is only going to become a bigger issue, and there are going to be more and more people, and there's so much confusion. It can be
On every level. On
every
every level.
level. Yeah. So, I mean, I truly just feel, I really, we laugh sometimes that Mike likes to joke that, when people ask us about how this all started, we were not sitting around going, we should start a business. What should it be? What should it be? It would not have been this. I don't think it would not have even come to a thought. And yet, isn't that the way God works so many of the times? Because the funniest part of this is that, when Mike first had this idea, I just said, that sounds depressing and not very fun to talk about. And then after we took her to memory care, and I saw, and I'd been paying attention, just all the things that were happening and the fact that nobody talks about this. And I said, I think you're right. Yes, we should do something. And then what was funny is that literally within, I think, a week after we had opened the Facebook group, and we
Mhm.
had, maybe 100 or 200 people in it,
Mhm.
and we've done a few interviews, and I just said, you know what? I'm I'm actually having fun with this. And I
Mhm.
didn't mean fun like ha ha fun.
No, but
But I just said, because
passionate.
what
Passionate.
I love to do is
Mhm.
learn things and teach it to
Mhm.
other people. So
Yes.
that's what I'm doing with the interviews.
That's your passion.
I love to connect people, and
Mhm.
connecting, I guess, is a passion. I love to connect people, and
Mhm.
that's what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
So this is not at all the topic I would have thought that it might be part of.
Yes.
And yet this is, I feel like this is something that I'm gifted and I can help people with, and we can connect them to the resources that they need, or the people they need, or to the other,
Yes.
other people that have been through similar experiences. And so I never would have thought that I would be this, and excited is probably not the word, maybe passionate about
Mhm. Mhm.
really supporting people in this stage of life, as
Mhm.
as we are currently walking right through it as well.
Yeah. And exactly your personal life and experience, and it's dovetailing together. And
Mhm.
that's how I'd like to close this tonight, is that there's a term, biz ministry, that I actually have the domain for. And because I see so clearly that God uses our, challenges and heartbreaks and setbacks to guide us to the next step. But you have shared a story tonight about, again, uh, let's, at school and at college, and, just changing majors and going that route and meeting Mike and building your life in that. But all of this, if that hadn't happened, and you
Mhm.
hadn't done what you did, you wouldn't be prepared to do what you're doing currently.
Oh yeah.
So one step leads to the next step. And that's the message. And
Yeah. Even when it's like this, right?
I did a post the other day about our plan. God's is, all over.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is the whole purpose, Kim, honestly, of doing this week in and week out, is to give people the understanding that you too, your story is within. It might not be the same story,
Mhm.
but know that God has a plan,
Yeah.
and just stay with that. and just take that first step.
Yeah.
Like you did.
Yeah, that's what I'm counting on.
17,000 people later, and it's only going to grow from there because one person talks to the next person.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, you're a light. You're a love. I treasure knowing you. I
Thank
love seeing you every time I do. But thank you for joining myself and whomever this evening and
Thank you. My
on
pleasure.
YouTube. So if you'd like to hang out in the green room for a minute, I'll be there in a few.
Okay.
Thank you. What a beautiful evening. And thank you for joining Kim Barnes and I for the Propel Deep Dive live. And then will be a podcast. And please do share this out. Go to YouTube, listen to it again. She shared so many pieces of information, not just about Barnes Team Media, which again, if you're in media, you do need to join one of their trainings. It's fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. And Mike is as fabulous as she. So it's just, I wanted just one person, and we'll have Mike on at another time. But the point is that go to their information, Barnes Team Media, but also, I want to say it correctly, Parenting Aging Parents. Again, we're all aging. I say my skincare products are for anyone from 8 to 108 who has skin. Well, that means us all. So we're all in this together, guys, and we all need each other, and we all need their program to help you crystallize and plan. And because then you can just enjoy life once you have everything together. So I look forward to having you with me and my guest next Wednesday night for another Propel Deep Dive live. I do a local as well, but a Propel Deep Dive live and then podcast. So we'll see you then on the Propel, but do join the Propel community where you receive so many things. It's a no-charge community. You receive a daily message of inspiration and encouragement from me. You receive a newsletter weekly that goes into the blog, notifications of all these events like the bootcamp masterclass that I did last week and other things that will continue on. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, hopefully, on the Propel community, and then next week on the Propel Deep Dive. Be blessed.